Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. For those who don't know, my name's Darlene McLennan. I'm the Manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, ADCET. Just before I start with an acknowledgement of country, I just want to say that this webinar is live captioned. You can activate the closed captions by clicking the CC button in the toolbar that is located either on the top or the bottom of your screen. We also have captions available via the web browser, and we've just put the link in our chat pod. Now I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Lutruwita, Tasmanian, Aboriginal land, sea and waterways, and acknowledge with deep respect the traditional custodians on the land upon where I am today, the Palawa people. I stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language and history, and a continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and rights, paving the way for a strong future. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the various lands on which you are tonight, and also acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are participating in this webinar. It always was and always will be. Tonight we're really excited to bring you our first webinar for 2021. This webinar will be presented by Mark Wilcock and Neil Malikan from ATOS in the UK. Very fortunate to have Mark and Neil with us, and I thank them for getting up on a cold UK morning to join us. They've been drinking coffee while we've been bemoaning that we haven't been able to start our wine yet. Tonight's presentation is around Microsoft Teams. This is something that we've been asked quite a lot about, around the accessibility of Microsoft Teams, and we've been attempting probably for the last year to get a webinar such as this. So I'm really excited that Neil and Mark are joining us tonight to share their knowledge and experience. There are a number of things that Teams does to help us to collaborate together and share and communicate, and yeah, to ensure that everybody can be a part of that is really important. So yeah, excited to be sitting back and listening to what they have to say. Just before we begin, there's a couple of other housekeeping details. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available on ADCET in the coming days. We will also be sending a survey at the end of the webinar, and we really appreciate it if you take the time to fill that in. If you have any technical difficulties, you can email us at admin@adcet.edu.au and we'll hope to be able to fix that in the back end. Mark and Neil will talk to us for around 40 or 50 minutes this evening, and then we'll end with some questions. If you would like to ask some questions, please put that in the Q&A box. That's where I'll be kind of running the questions. I will ask the questions to Mark and Neil. We'll also have the up button set so you can actually vote for the most popular question. So that will mean that I can get to see the top question and ask that first. If you want to have a conversation with each other or everybody, you can use the chat box, and please choose all presenters and attendees so that we can all see you. It'd be great if everybody can say where they're coming from tonight and what they're up to beforehand or what they're after, because it's great to kind of connect with each other across this beautiful nation. Okay, that's it from me. Now over to you, Neil and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. It's a delight to be with you today from the grey and miserable United Kingdom. Just one little point of housekeeping. I see that we've got for internal use on our slides. Don't worry, we're quite happy for this to be shared. Mark, if you could move the slides on, please. Okay, I'm going to go through a little bit about who we are. Then we'll cover Teams, how that works as a general product. We'll look at interoperability with the major assistive technologies, and then also cover some of the integrated assistive features in Teams, because Microsoft is adding lots and lots of new features that are assistive and can help from an accessibility standpoint. Next slide, please. So I frequently ask this question, who am I? What am I doing here? So I'm actually the global head of accessibility for ATOS. We're a large systems integrator. We've got about 110,000 employees worldwide. We do everything from landing space probes on comets for the European Space Agency to doing the stuff for the Olympics and Paralympics, to delivering people's desktop experiences, their day-to-day computing experiences. I've been in the field of assistive tech for a couple of decades now. I've been shouting at computers for 20 years. They've started answering back. I'm co-founder of Access Chat outside of work, which is a social media thing focused on accessibility and inclusion. We do interviews with people, we caption them, we share them, and then there's a Q&A on Twitter every Tuesday night European time, Wednesday morning, really, really early Australia time. If anyone's interested, you just look for that hashtag, wide variety of topics. I do a lot of work outside of Atos with their blessing, working with other disability NGOs, and I'm passionate about bringing together communities to make the world more inclusive. And I believe that we do that by connecting and sharing. Mark, over to you.
Yep, good morning. So my name is Mark Wilcock. I haven't been working in accessibility as long as Neil, about 6 years now. And I also work at Atos. I've been involved in a few external kind of groups. So that was, one of them was for the development of WCAG, as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, which released a while ago now, and is used kind of as a standard for the accessibility of web content, best kind of guidelines and testing and auditing. And then more recently, I've been quite heavily involved as the co-chair for the development of the first global digital accessibility apprenticeship here in the UK, so we can upskill individuals into kind of this sector.
So I've talked a little bit about Atos already. We are here because we're a Microsoft partner. We work closely with Microsoft across lots of different things, but particularly keen to work with each other in the field of accessibility, because this is part of our shared ethos as organizations. We obviously do a lot in the space of digital. We're in 72 countries. We are members of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, where, of course, we participate in the certifications. They've participated in the initiatives that Mark just mentioned, the apprenticeship program that we've been bringing forward in the UK. And generally, we try to work collaboratively to improve access and inclusion, not just for our customers, but across ecosystems. We've left a link in there so that when you download the presentation later, you can connect to us. Okay, so general features. Teams is a collaboration tool. It does lots and lots of things. It is the thing that Microsoft are concentrating as the app of the future of their working environment. Obviously, you have chat. It's also a hub for teamwork. It's customizable for each team. So we've been using chat tools for a long time, but what's happening now is that there are more and more features available in something like Teams. One of the things that I like about Teams is the fact that you can actually link all of that in with all of the other Office 365 applications, and it brings everything into one unified space. Obviously, with the proliferation of lots and lots of information, not everyone's going to need everything. So the customizability of Teams is really important. You can tailor your workspace to include content and apps and features that meet your everyday needs. And I would recommend that you work out what it is you need in each team and do take some time to do that customization, because otherwise one of the challenges that you have is that you can quite quickly become overwhelmed with the amount of content. So that customizability is quite important. Next slide, please. So obviously the art of conversation is incredibly important, especially in a world where people no longer go to the office. So Teams has grown exponentially since the inception of COVID and people working from home. So we need to be able to communicate. A lot of that communication is done through private chats. You can see the content and chat history at any time. So this is what is called persistent chat. It doesn't sort of disappear into the ether. You can go back and you can search it and so on. Team chats are also visible, but you need to be mindful that you're chatting with the entire team, and therefore everyone in the team can see it. So one of the things that I frequently do is that if I'm searching for someone, you need to be mindful that it will bring up both the person and the private conversation and team chats where you have been chatting with someone, and also chats from meetings. So if you post it in the wrong bit and you are indiscreet, your indiscretion will be there for everyone to see. You can delete stuff though. It's available on all of the sort of major OSs, so you can also get it on mobile. So I have Teams on my mobile devices. I have it on my computers, and I've recently found out that you can start adding in your personal contacts as well. I'm going to kiss goodbye to the rest of my personal life if I bring in my personal contacts into Teams. So I'm leaving that for now, but essentially you can take Teams with you wherever you are. Next slide, please. Obviously, we want to collaborate and share content, and you can also share tools. And this is really important in an education scenario, because you're teaching people stuff. You can distribute learning materials. You can share PowerPoints and Word documents, and also things like Planner enable people to keep track of things. So if you've got an education plan or a work stream that you're doing, or a project, you can use this. You can also use things like SharePoint for keeping all of your documents as a repository, and OneNote as well. And obviously OneNote has been massive in education anyway, but you can use the OneNote features within Teams. And indeed, you can use some of the features that were embedded first in terms of inbuilt access from OneNote in Teams as well now. I think that what's nice is that you can do this within the app, so you don't actually have to open up PowerPoint. You don't actually have to open up Word. You can edit it in the app, and if everything is configured correctly, what you're going to see, and this is not your problem, this is your system administrator's problem. So if it doesn't work, blame IT, not me, not Microsoft. But essentially, when you open that and you can collaborate on documents, they get shared back to SharePoint and so on. So you can live collaborate on documents within Teams, which is great when you're co-creating stuff. At the moment, we've been working on this particular presentation. We did this in Teams. We were collaborating, we were sharing, we were making adjustments on the fly within Teams, within PowerPoint. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned already that it's available on desktop and mobile, but it's also a full-functioned chat client on the web that you can use through various browsers. So pretty much anywhere, so long as you can remember your login details and your Microsoft account, you can get access to Teams. You can communicate with your friends, colleagues, students, loved ones, should you choose to let them know that you can do that, and continue to educate and learn. Next slide, please. So Teams is Microsoft's fastest growing product ever. And of course, we know the reason for some of that is the global pandemic and the shift to working from home. But it was already the fastest growing product ever at Microsoft before that happened. COVID just accelerated that growth, which is a very positive thing, because it means that everyone's starting to be on a unified platform. But that explosive growth also means that Microsoft is spending a lot of time developing new features. It's a relatively new product. It's grown very fast. And that means that there are frequent changes to Teams because they're adding features all of the time. So one of the things that I always recommend doing is hidden in the help menu is a what's new menu, and you can go to the what's new menu, and in there not only do you get help, but you can see what the features are that are coming. Because Teams is managed for the most part in large institutions like universities and enterprise by the IT department, you may not find all of the features that we talk about here today available to you yet, because it depends on which version of Teams your IT department has enabled and how they've configured it. There are lots of features that are still being actively integrated and developed, and depending on which of those deployment rings you're on. So Microsoft calls the sort of their beta programs the fast ring. So, and so you get new features quicker. You may find that new stuff pops up all of the time. I think that for the most part, most large organizations adopt new features slower. And that's because there is greater stability when you're a little bit more cautious. That said, I like to play, and so I tend to go for the early stuff because I want to know what's coming. Next slide, please. So this is really why you're here and why we're talking to you. This is the nub of it. We support at Atos a lot of assistive tech users, many thousands of users of different assistive techs. I'm an assistive tech user, have been for 20 years. Recognize fully how important it is for people to understand how this stuff works together and where bits of it don't yet, because the reality of working with assistive tech is that it's an imperfect world, and that we're always playing catch up with the new features to work out how we get this stuff to work together. Next slide, please. So, speech recognition, my particular flavor of assistive tech. There is pretty limited interoperability with speech recognition products like Dragon Naturally Speaking and Dictate. So this is a challenge, particularly if you have limited mobility. I use speech recognition because I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD, so I use it for text composition and not for command and control of my computer. So I can use my mouse and I can use my keyboard. I can still navigate around Teams relatively easily. Don't talk to me about the cognitive load of working out where I am and that I've got lost, but in terms of actually physically being able to operate it, I can do so. But if you require speech control, then that's much more difficult. And actually there are some workarounds that you can download as Dragon macros that can help you with control, but it's not built into Dragon Naturally Speaking, and it's not built in to Teams yet. Microsoft Dictation has recently been made available, and you use Windows key and H, and you can dictate general text. This is okay for short pieces of text, but one of the challenges with dictation that everyone that uses it will know is that it's not the dictating that is the difficult bit. It's the making sure that what you've got on the page is accurate and the correction. And the Microsoft dictation tools don't allow you to correct by voice at the moment. Next slide, please. So, as I said, Dragon is not officially supported. You'll need to use the dictation box, and that is sorry, you'll need not to use it because otherwise you're going to have it coming out separately, and then you have to copy it and paste it in. And yes, standard navigation commands don't work. This is something that we have raised with Microsoft. I'm sure it's on their development list of things to do. And we will keep you posted on that because it's something that absolutely I want as much as the next person. Next slide, please. So you can do certain things. You can create custom commands. So one of the things that we've done for this presentation is to give you some shortcuts to some links to the keyboard shortcuts for Teams. You can create macros in Dragon, and these can send keys on behalf of the program, so it acts like you're using the keyboard, and therefore you can replicate the keyboard shortcuts. So this can be accessed from the command center in Dragon. You can add a new command, you can copy and paste the keyboard shortcuts, and you can then actually choose your own name for that command, such as open private conversation, add the keyboard shortcuts, and then when you dictate it, that will work for you. There is another issue with Teams and voice, which is really important, and that is because Teams also uses the microphone. Can you move to the next slide, please? So this has been a problem with any assistive tech, so speech recognition and communication tools like Skype for Business, like Zoom, have always had a challenge coping where two different programs require you to be able to use the microphone. So you need to be fairly assiduous with your turning on and off of the microphone to make sure that you're not dictating at the point when you want to be using the audio for speaking. It's something that is an operating system level problem rather than a team specific problem, but it manifests itself because you're using the microphone for a different purpose. You're using the audio for speech communication rather than speech recognition. Some people get around this by setting up separate microphones for Dragon and for Teams. I've been on calls with people with two monaural microphones and the boom's like this. It's not that uncommon to set that up. The challenge then becomes if you're using Teams and Zoom and all of the other platforms, because we know that in our day-to-day lives there are challenges because lots of people use different platforms. The sound settings get mixed up. So quite often you'll have to essentially shut down all of the other services to get stuff working again. Right, over to Mark for the next section on JAWS.
Yep, so I'm just going to speak about the JAWS interoperability now with Teams. So Microsoft has put a huge emphasis on making sure that their Teams product works well with screen readers in general, but also JAWS quite specifically. So Microsoft and Freedom Scientific have created a huge kind of library of training material, and that is still being added to. There are some links later on in the slide deck to that material. It is both in articles and in video. So if you do want to kind of follow through somebody navigating to kind of a conversation, because I know there were some questions about kind of workflows and how to do those in Teams. So there are some great training materials out there to step through all the processes, highlighting kind of the quickest and most convenient way to actually navigate Teams, because it is so content heavy, just with how it is generally. But there are some obviously challenges using JAWS, because obviously how the content is structured and the kind of content that is being shared, it is kind of just and how it's kind of laid out is a real challenge for screen readers in general to make it in an easy navigational kind of sequence. One thing about that is it's actually really important and critical that not only you rely on Teams to be accessible, but when people, yourselves, your colleagues, putting in content into Teams, is that it is created in an accessible manner as well. So it's really important that you create and use your accessibility and communication etiquette. So structuring your kind of longer worded messages. So there is a text composition feature. So when you're actually creating a message, if you navigate into the edit options, there's a compose message feature which allows you there to structure content more in depth using headings, and setting paragraphs, headings, and other kind of text content, which helps JAWS interpret the content more clearly. So on to kind of a really useful feature for JAWS, I'd say, is the advanced search feature. Microsoft call it the enhanced search. And in this field, so you can access that using Control R, you can actually do quick commands. So if you use the slash, and then there's a number of commands such as /call, /join, and this basically lets you action something quickly without having to navigate through the menus. So as an example, if you went to that enhanced search field and did /call and then somebody's name, so for example, Neil, you could quickly call him without having to navigate to your contacts, finding Neil in your contacts, then selecting the call button. You could just do it all from that search bar, and it will actually just straight away call him. And there's some other great features as well in there. So there's /go to, and then if you put space, and then if you know what team or channel you're trying to locate, again, it will just take you directly to that part. The great thing about this as well is when you actually put these commands in, they will start popping up with suggestions, but below the search bar, which can be navigated using your up and down arrow keys. And they kind of show you what you mostly use. So it is intelligent in what it'll display to you. So if you're always going into a specific channel, or you're always running that command and going to that certain location, it will show those at the top, and it's obviously just a bit quicker. So you don't have to type out the full channel name, or if you can't remember it, because sometimes people name them strange and wonderful things, you can just kind of get there really quickly and conveniently without having to navigate the whole interface, which is a lot easier. Another thing you can do in there is /activity. So you can put someone there and you can see the activity with that individual if you're trying to find something specific, or /mentions, and that will display all your personal mentions. So if you're trying to find out where somebody's tagged you in something and you need to action it, you can quickly bring up all those interfaces as well. And these ones are constantly being added to, and the list is expanding. And if you do need the full list, if you do /commands, /commands or /help in that field, it'll bring up the help article for that part. So as I mentioned, Microsoft and Freedom Scientific have created a huge list of training material, both in written and in video and auditory forms that you can listen to. So there's just a few links here. So once the slide deck's distributed, you'll be able to just click through and browse any specific ones at your leisure. But there's a lot more than this, and the top link, the bottom link for the Freedom Scientific one, is the actual full playlist that you can kind of go through and find if there's a specific topic. So on to interoperability with screen magnifiers. So the ones we kind of selected here was ZoomText, which is the industry leading one in the UK. So in terms of kind of support for it, it's basically got the same support as a standard browser. So you will get some pixelation and distortion in icons or more visual content, which is not ideal. But within Teams, because it's uses a browser to display the content to you via their technologies, you do have the standard zoom in and zoom out options, which a browser would provide, which goes from 60 to 200%, and that doesn't pixelate. But it is important to note when you do use that functionality to enlarge content, the layout of the actual application will alter as the basically the screen changes to the smaller kind of interface display. In terms of kind of ZoomText, the other functionality that it provides, such as enhanced focus and cursor, they do work fine within Teams, and they will correctly outline or highlight the content that is important. So on to the next section, which is related to the integrated accessibility features that Microsoft provides within Teams. And the first one is about live closed captions. So Teams can detect what is being said in the meeting and present real-time captions. Within this setting, you need to enable the new meeting experience. So if you go to your settings and enable the new meeting experience, but it can be automatically enabled by your IT administrator. So it depends on your settings again. And just to note, live captions may not be available to all of you because it is a setting that is this can be enabled or disabled on the server admin side. And what that does is it'll auto detect what somebody is saying and show live captions for that content. Recently, a new feature has been added that actually attributes captions to a certain speaker. So when I'm speaking, Teams will identify that and highlight that the captions from myself as well, which is something new. It's important to note that at the moment, captions aren't available in all languages, and they are kind of predominantly focused on or best detection on English US for now, but they do have ambitions to expand that. Live captions can make your meetings more inclusive to participants who are deaf, hard of hearing, have different levels of language proficiency, and also if somebody's kind of traveling to work or in a loud place or slightly distracted, they can have the captions on and still follow along without having to have the audio enabled. One thing to note though is Teams does not save your captions. So after the meeting, if the meeting hasn't been recorded, all that captions and all that data will be deleted and it isn't permanently stored either by Microsoft or locally on your device.
However, and this is something to remember, if you record the meeting, you can upload it to another Microsoft service, which is Streams. Have I just butted in on your next slide, Mark?
No.
But essentially, there is a product called Microsoft Stream, which will create transcripts of meetings if you record them. So if you want to record meetings for posterity and have transcripts which can then create captions, you can use Stream. Again, the quality is not the same as using a live transcriptionist that is trained to do this, but it's improving, and the number of supported languages is increasing on a regular basis.
Yeah, and how you'd enable the captions. So if you navigate to the lower meeting options bar, and then under more options, there, if it's enabled for yourself or you can turn it on, there will be an option in that menu called turn on live captions. It's important to note that to get the most out of captions, there's a few kind of etiquettes that's best to follow. So obviously try not to speak over each other because at the end of the day it is like an AI that is doing it. So it's going to obviously just interpret what's being said, and the more voices, the more chaos, the less it's likely it's going to actually understand you accurately. Also, it is obviously dependent on having a good microphone and setup. So clear audio obviously makes better captions. And then obviously just avoid loud background noises and all the such that you should, well, basically during a meeting anyway. No, it is at the moment obviously just available in that English. So if you are speaking if individuals are speaking with a strong accent, then it might detect you less clearly. So just some frequently asked questions about captions. So obviously, where is the data actually processed? So it is important to note that all the data that is captioned is sent to a Microsoft or a server location to be processed. It isn't locally processed on your device. So that's just one thing about security. And if you don't want basically captions or the audio to be streamed to an external server, just don't enable captions and it won't do that. But if you do enable it, it obviously will send that data there. But Microsoft don't permanently store that data, and it is only processed and then redistributed to yourself. On to the next one. So there's a few kind of meeting options that is provided within Teams that can be beneficial to enhance the accessibility of your meetings. So one of them is intelligent background blurring. So you can see a lovely mugshot of myself there. And basically what this allows, obviously it reduces distractions in the background for anybody following along in the meeting, but it also allows, obviously now we're all working from home, if somebody is to interrupt your meeting, it's less obvious. In terms of kind of enabling that, once you're in the meeting, or you can do it prior to the meeting in the pre-meeting interface. If you select the more options again in the bottom meeting section, and then there's a apply background effects. You can either apply a blur, or if you want, you can apply a static image into the background if you'd rather do that. It's important to note that you shouldn't use it to blur out sensitive material, because it doesn't always function perfectly. So still just hide anything that you don't want people to see in your meetings. It shouldn't be used as a way around that.
One further comment on that, in terms of if you know that you have people that are lip reading, it's better to choose a plain blurred background than something that is really bright. Also, people like myself that have scotopic sensitivity or some visual impairments, some of the really jazzy backgrounds that are available as a choice within Teams may actually be problematic for people like me and people with certain visual impairments and visual sensitivities. So be mindful of that when you're working with people that you don't know, and err on the side of caution.
And just a kind of a side note, it isn't available on all devices. So I know Neil mentioned earlier that Teams is obviously available on mobile, web, and on desktop. At the moment, it's not available on all those devices. So the option might not be there. So if the option's not there, then it is not available on that platform. Onto kind of additional meeting options. So there's a few here. So pinning participants, spotlighting participants. So this is really useful if you have a sign language interpreter, or somebody who's basically leading the majority of the meeting. So when you're actually in a meeting, Microsoft Teams will intelligently detect who should be spotlighted or shown to individuals in that meeting. But obviously it might not always be the best or most relevant individual. So what the difference is there is the pinning participant is done locally on your device, so you can select who you want to pin. And how that's done is if you navigate to the individual you're wanting to pin, and then selecting the more options there is the pin option in there. The spotlighting feature works pretty much exactly the same, except this is for people who are organizing the calls. So you would navigate to the same location and the more options under the specific speaker you want to spotlight. And then if you're a call organizer, you'll have the spotlight option there. And what that'll do is spotlight that individual specifically for everybody in that meeting. So like I say, if you've got a sign language interpreter or anyone or kind of anything along those lines, you could spotlight that specific person, so it kind of brings it into the main focus. Because if you have a large audience, then it can become quite distracting who's kind of popping about and moving about, and it can deteriorate that. Additionally, Microsoft Teams provides a feature that's called background noise suppression. That's enabled locally as well. So unfortunately, you can't turn that on if somebody's got a huge background noise in their house, but you can turn it on locally for yourself. And I suggest that everyone turns it on, because it just enhances the audio ever so much. And it just makes everything that bit clearer and reduces the background distractions and noise. A more recent feature called breakout rooms has recently been added, and that's actually really useful for educational setting. So that allows basically people to get into smaller groups. So if people don't feel confident speaking in the main meeting, or you've got a huge meeting and you want to break out into kind of focus groups or little social groups, the call organizer can start a breakout, and that basically allows them to move or allows people to move themselves to specific rooms. And whilst they're in those specific rooms, the organizer can jump between them, send out kind of notifications in mass to highlight certain features, or say there's 5 minutes left before we're all going to come back together. And it's really just a great feature to use to enhance the kind of small group activities, especially as we're all in lockdown and isolating at the moment. So for some options within the chat, so one of them is obviously your activity status. So even though it might be quite a small thing for many, just setting yourself as busy, available, do not disturb, it can actually be hugely beneficial if you find concentrating quite difficult, or you're constantly kind of getting distracted by people's pings. So setting your status is if you navigate to your profile settings, and then under that, there'll be the different statuses you can set. And obviously, do not disturb being the highest level one, where basically you won't get pinged whilst you're on that status. But you can obviously catch up with it all after the fact. And it just lets people gently know kind of what your status is, and if you do or don't want to be distracted at the moment if you're trying to concentrate on something.
This is a really useful feature for people who are neurodivergent like me, that have issues with distractions, but you can go a layer deeper and actually set exceptions. So I have an exception for like the VIPs within my organization. So I may not want to be disturbed by everyone in the organization, but if my boss wants to get hold of me, he usually still can, because I've allowed him an exception, so he can still contact me. So there's quite a lot of granularity in the settings that you can do here to control how much communication, how much of the fire hose you're drinking from, because that is one of the challenges with these communication tools, is that there is as much communication as you could possibly ever want, and probably a little bit more. So being able to control who can communicate with you and when, and the immediacy, I think is really important for if you're trying to concentrate on creation of documents and difficult topics that require you to be thinking about stuff and not disturbed, because distraction is really a challenge when you're learning and creating.
And Microsoft also provides the translation feature. So with kind of such large international organizations, you can kind of keep a conversation flowing and speak with your colleagues elsewhere, or if they speak a different language, and it can translate there and then in the actual chat window, and basically just keep that conversation flowing. So on to a really cool feature that they've implemented, which is the immersive reader. So if you've used OneNote before, I think you'll be quite familiar with the feature, but they've integrated it now within Teams. In terms of kind of what it provides a huge host of features that allows you to kind of hear back messages, chats, posts, or kind of documents within actual Teams. And it also provides a plethora of grammar tools, such as Parts of Speak and Picture Dictionary. And how you'd enable this is if you go to the message or the document that you're trying to use in Immersive Reader and select the more options, there'll be an Immersive Reader option in there. What I'd note is it does open a separate window, so it doesn't open within Teams directly. It will open a separate window with the content in. So just make sure that you selected all the content that you want to be basically transferred into Immersive Reader. Otherwise, you'll just be flicking back and forth a bit. But once you get used to it, it's quite straightforward. So on to kind of some of the features that Immersive Reader provides. So as I mentioned, it has the listen back feature. So that allows you to have content read back to you with a kind of a customization of settings. So you can have a male or a female voice. And if you prefer your content to be read back quickly or slowly, you can configure that as well. So it's really configurable, and it's great to review documents. I find it really useful for reviewing documents, just because when you're reading or interpreting that information, it can be different to what's actually on the page. In terms of kind of text options, so it does allow you to customize the text that is brought across into Immersive Reader. So if your colleague or somebody set some awful font or text size, you can configure that and change that within Immersive Reader to your requirements, to your specifications, and that allows you to increase the text size, choose from a number of fonts, and also you can change kind of what the text color and background is. So if you prefer kind of a high contrast mode, you could set kind of the font to white and the background to black, or there's a few other settings as well in there that you can customize. But it is a limited list, so you can't specifically set your kind of colors, but there are quite a few there to select from. And then more for educational kind of setting, there is parts of speech in the grammar options, which allows you to kind of highlight and outline syllables, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and this both can be done via just simply coloring the text to that the setting that you've selected, or you can actually turn on the labels mode, and that'll show the actual label that it's a noun rather than just coloring the text. But you can customize the color that Immersive Reader changes those words and those specific sections of text as well. So a few more features that Immersive Reader provides is line focus. So if you just want a single line basically brought into focus or highlighted so you can concentrate on it, you can do this, and it basically just blurs out the rest of the document and highlights that specific part in the color and settings that you selected. Picture dictionary, which allows you to look up or kind of search words and provide kind of a image feedback for that word. So for an example, that as it says there, a city, you could hover over that, hover or select that word, and it will show a picture of a city or whatnot it's found on Bing search. And then again, you can translate the document if it's in different languages to your preferred language. So as I mentioned before, there is the feature to zoom in and out of the content, such as the same as in a Chrome browser. So you can use Control and equals to zoom in, and Control and minus to zoom out. And that's the same if you use your Control and then your scroll wheel scrolling in or out, as you would with a standard browser. And if you do want to reset it at any point, say if you magnify it too large, you can just use Control and 0, and that'll reset the settings just back to 100% magnification, and you'll have the default interface. So Microsoft Teams does provide the customization to change the settings within the application. So there's high contrast mode, which is yellow on black for text. And then you've also got the standard kind of light and dark mode, as most applications call it, where you've got it slightly less intense on the eyes. But if the high contrast mode obviously has a higher contrast, so it allows you to differentiate the text from the background more clearly, and that can be accessed within your general settings section. So if you navigate in the top banner to your profile, within that drop-down menu, there'll be a settings, and then in settings in general, and then in the themes there, you can either select the high contrast, dark, or light one, and the light one is selected by default.
One of the things that you can also do with Microsoft 365 in general is you can set these settings to follow you with your M365 profile. So you can do it, you can set it once, and it will appear that way across all of your range of devices. You can choose to do that, or you can choose to have it different on different devices.
And then on to the enhanced search. So I know I've mentioned it previously before using the commands. So it's the same field that you can use. So in there, you can also search for content generally. So if you do type something, say marketing, It will bring up not only conversations, it'll bring up anywhere that it's basically found in your Microsoft Teams experience. So it could be in a chat, it could be in a group conversation, it could be within a team meeting, or it could be within a document that's being done in Teams. It will bring all of those up, and it will allow you to kind of quickly filter information a lot. It also provides you the granularity to set the filtering options within in those settings, so you can filter by type, people, messages, but also by kind of location, date, and other general kind of things you can enhance your searches by. And then onto keyboard navigation. So Microsoft will provide a huge emphasis on providing shortcuts to a lot of content, functionality, and sections within Microsoft Teams. And there's a huge list of them, which are all linked below. So they've broken down into general, navigational, messaging, and meeting. And when the slide deck's distributed, you can select those and read through at your own leisure all the different shortcuts, because there are a lot of shortcuts there. It is important to note, though, that there are differences between the experiences and what the shortcut is. So, for example, between desktop and web, there will be a difference between the shortcuts used to navigate to certain sections. So it's just important to note that. Just a kind of a few important ones. F1, when you've got Teams open, will bring up the help interface, and that allows you to access that information about training and all of the information that Microsoft provides to help you use Teams. And it does have a search bar in that help section that lets you just navigate it a bit easier. So if you're trying to do something specific, if you hit F1, you should be by default in that search bar. You can type in what you're after, and it will return kind of what information it's got, just to help you with your journey. When you're in Teams, if you want to actually look at all the shortcut keys rather than navigating to these links, you can use Control and then the period, and that will bring up the shortcut keys within Teams in a kind of an interface within Teams, rather than having to go to the web. A lot of the side navigation, so chats, calls, Teams, can be open using Control and then the relative number, so 1 to, I think it's 6. Chats being Control 2 and calls being Control 5. If you do have kind of incoming calls, they can be accepted using Control-Shift-S, or if you want to decline it, Control-Shift-D. So that's just the end of the presentation. So any questions?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark and Neil, for that. It was brilliant. I was having a little play in Teams as we were going along. It's great. So if anybody's got any questions, Neil's done very well. He's been answering the questions as we've been going. So if anybody's got any other questions that Neil hasn't answered, please put in the Q&A box. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I mean, we did have 100 and something people register. We've only had 25 join in, so people must have been tempted by dinner and children and wine, etc. So, but I'm sure people will really enjoy the video. I know I'll certainly go back to the recording, and kind of catch up on some of the key things you've done. And also we might try to pull out some of those shortcut keys and put them on the web, so it's really easy for people to find instead of going through the presentation as well. So there was some really great hints there for especially for screen reader users using the shortcut keys. So it doesn't look like there's any other questions coming through. Is there any final comments that you want to make, Neil or Mark?
Yeah, I've got one actually, because there was a question that was sent in beforehand, which was about using whiteboards with Teams, and whiteboards aren't really greatly accessible, even as a standard whiteboard. You can start a whiteboard and you can share a whiteboard from within Teams, and you will need to, if you're using JAWS, then you'll need to enable the virtual cursor because it's turned off by default now for Teams. But again, you're going to have all sorts of content going on there. If you're wanting to do one of those kind of ideation sessions, I would recommend rather that you share and do this using OneNote, because that's got a lot more support for assistive tech built in. But it's still going to be quite a challenge with all of the random placement of boxes and comments and everything else. So adding some structure and sort of some planning, and to a certain extent facilitation, is probably the only way to do that kind of inclusive ideation process at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so very much, guys. It's brilliant. Just before we finish up and people kind of log off, just wanted to do a bit of a plug for our next 2 webinars. We have 2 sessions coming up, one on Claro Read and one on Claro Writing Helper. So all the information on those are on our website, but the date set for that is the 25th of February and the 26th of February. So it'd be wonderful if people can join us for those presentations. There is another question in the chat. Do you have any field timing for real integration with Dragon and Teams? So I suppose if there's any feel for when that's going to happen, is it kind of far away, or?
I think that's quite difficult to answer because it's not within my control. Obviously, we are asking for it. I have a feeling that what will happen is that there will be there'll be an increase in the capabilities of the inbuilt speech, because obviously with Nuance owning Dragon, there is a dependency on both Microsoft and Nuance doing stuff together. It's not impossible because Nuance and Microsoft are working on some pretty funky stuff. So in the healthcare sector, they have this thing called the Dragon Ambient Experience, where they've got microphones all around a room, and it's listening to the consultation, and it's suggesting additions to the doctor's notes and so on, and they're doing some of that in Teams as well. So at some point, I think there will be greater integration. I couldn't possibly give you a timeline because I'm not privy to it, but I'm hoping that it will be sooner rather than later as a user myself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think some of the things that I've learned tonight is that, that the frustration of, your own IT system can actually lock down some really invaluable tools that we should, we can be sharing with our students and users as staff within Teams, which, we can put them in, pressure on them in the first instance to ensure that, we have what we should have in there. But also I think, a number of us have actually made, individual contact with Microsoft and provided feedback. So hopefully if we can continue to that too, things are just going to get better and better.
Absolutely. If you wish Microsoft to know about stuff, put it on, go to their website, log it as a feature request, contact their enterprise disability answer desk, because that's the way that they monitor these things and feed that back into the product team. The more that we do that through the official channels, the more it gets logged, the hopefully faster these features get fixed or added, and we can improve the overall inclusive experience for people.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Neil and Mark. We will let you get on with your day. I hope it's a successful day, and hopefully the sun might peek out between the clouds and something for you. And we'll all continue on with our evenings.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.